What is up guys, Blue Spooky here. Just wanted to remind you guys before the start of this video that starting this week we will be back on the regular schedule again. That means that on the 6 weekdays there will be new scary stories, at least ones that I've never read on this channel before, and on Sundays we will return to the once a week compilation. If you guys end up enjoying this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps the video and the channel to do well, and ensure I can keep making these videos for a long time to come. If you guys have any thoughts about the stories in this video, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, as I always enjoy reading your guys' thoughts, even if I can't always respond to them. Without further ado though guys, I will let you enjoy the next hour or so of true scary stories, and I will see you again at the end of the video. I'm going to start this story with some background information. I'm a 26-year-old man living in Tennessee, near the Great Smoky Mountains. I've been a fan of true scary stories for years now, but I've never really wanted to share this story of mine, mainly because it genuinely disturbs me to no end and has mentally scarred me. In order to move on with my life, I had to put it out of my head for a while, but after watching some videos and doing some serious self-reflection, I've decided to share this and let all of you judge it for yourselves. This happened a year after I graduated from high school. I had just started working at a local convenience store, one town over from where I lived. I had been working there for about a month and a half now. One night I was working a little bit later than usual. The employee who was meant to relieve me never ended up showing up. I called up my manager to tell him the employee was a no-show, and he wasn't exactly surprised. Apparently, he'd been having multiple issues with that guy and expected him to quit sooner or later. Listen, I'm really sorry about this, but I'm gonna need you to stay until closing time and lock the place up. Call me if you need anything. It was no big deal for me. I actually liked working by myself. Most of the time, the store stayed open until around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Of course, depending on if we had any customers inside or not. I was cleaning up one of the aisles in the back of the store after helping out some customers. I had one earbud in my ear, listening to an audiobook on my phone. That was when I heard the front door open. I walked to the front counter to see if this person would need any help. The only problem was I didn't see anyone there. At first, I thought they may have walked directly to the bathroom, since it was right next to the entrance. But after waiting about 10 to 15 minutes, I walked over to see if it was locked. To my surprise, it was unoccupied. The door was slightly cracked open, and the light was even turned off as well. I opened the bathroom and flipped on the light just to make sure there was no one in there. There really wasn't. I suddenly felt uneasy. I looked back out into the store to see if anyone else was around. I even called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was no answer. I was starting to think that either I was just getting tired or there was something wrong with the door chimes. I decided to ignore this strange occurrence and go back to cleaning. About an hour and a half later, though, the door suddenly chimed once again. I walked back to the front, and again, no one was there. I started thinking to myself that surely there had to be something wrong with these damn chimes. I wrote a note on the register to tell my boss the next day. A few minutes later, the door chime went off again. I looked up toward the front of the store and saw that the doors were actually still open this time. I quickly made my way to the front, but when I got there was no one to be seen. I knew for sure I had just seen the doors open when the chimes went off. I checked the bathroom again and even walked down all of the aisles. A chill went down my spine, not at what I did see, but the fact that there wasn't a single soul in sight. It was so strange. I didn't really understand what was happening. I decided I was just going to stand by the front counter until my shift ended. I had about 45 minutes left. 20 minutes went by of me just hanging out by the counter when someone actually came in this time. "Good evening," I said to them. The person that came in was wearing an old winter coat with a black hood on their head. This wasn't out of the ordinary, though. It was 40 degrees out that night. The person didn't respond to my greeting. I figured they either couldn't hear me or didn't want to interact for some reason. I didn't really mind it too much. Maybe they had a pair of headphones on under their hood or something. They walked over to the back of the shop. Since closing time was coming up, I began to clean the counter. About 20 minutes had gone by, and I realized that that person I'd seen earlier had never come back to pay for anything. I looked all around the store's area and saw there was no one there. This was a small, privately owned store that didn't have much in the way of security. The area it was located in saw little to no crime. We only had one camera facing the front door and one in the parking lot. I called out to this mysterious person, "Hey, you finding everything okay?" I got no response in return. "Look, I'm closing in 10 minutes. Is there something I can help you with?" Again, there was no response. I walked to the back of the store where I'd last seen the person, and another chill went up my back. I saw one of the fridge doors was open, but there was no sign of the mysterious figure. I closed the fridge door and walked up and down every aisle. I didn't see anyone. I was so creeped out before, but now I was full-on freaking out. I decided at that point I would walk back up to the front and call my boss. "Hello? Hey, it's me. Something weird is going on here." My boss asked what I meant. "So, this guy in a jacket came in about 30 minutes ago. I saw him head toward the fridge section in the back and he was taking a while. When I went to check on him though, he wasn't there." "Alright, give me a second. I'll look at the cameras and see if he left the building." I also mentioned to my boss about how the door chime had been going off for the past couple of hours, even when no one had entered the store. "That's strange. You didn't see anyone come in at all?" "No, not till this guy in the jacket came in." After a minute of my boss looking to the camera feed, he told me something that really messes with my head to this day. "Are you absolutely sure that somebody came into the store? I'm reviewing clips from the past 2 hours and you're the only person in them." I felt a knot form in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean I'm the only one in the video?" "Look, I'm telling you, you're the only person in the store walking back and forth from the aisles to the counter for the past 2 hours. This was when I started to second-guess myself. Did I really ever see someone come into the store at all? I took a long look around. I thought maybe I was just tired. "Sorry, I haven't been sleeping well lately." "It's okay, just go ahead and lock up for the night. Go home and get some rest." Sound advice. I began to close everything up, putting all the money in the safe, cleaning up the counters. That's when I heard a laughing coming from the back of the store. It wasn't really a ha-ha funny kind of laugh. It was more of a sinister chuckle. I stopped what I was doing and looked up to see that the fridge door was open again. Now, we kept a baseball bat behind the counter, just as a precaution. None of us had ever had to use it before, but I grabbed that bat and wielded it like a saber as I advanced toward the back of the store. The fridge door was open again. That was the least of my worries, though. A hooded figure was standing just beyond the open door. "Holy shit! How long have you been back there?" The figure didn't answer. I gripped the bat tighter. "Hey man, are you alright?" That's when a deep, raspy voice replied, "I'm thirsty." "Okay, is there something I can help you with? I'm about to close up here." I heard him chuckle again. I began slowly backing away. Something was off about this guy. I didn't know if he was on drugs or what. "Look, I've got to lock up now. How about you grab a drink, come on up, and I'll get you out of here, okay?" The man just stood there. The reflection off the glass of the door and his hood made it impossible for me to see his face. I decided it wasn't a good idea to engage any further. I retreated back to the counter, grabbed my phone, and called my boss. He answered after the first ring. "Hey, that guy I said was in here earlier is standing by the fridge right now. He's just standing there chuckling like a lunatic. I can't get him to leave. What should I do?" My boss went silent for a moment. "What does he look like?" "I don't know, he has this black hood on under an old winter jacket, pair of jeans, some black shoes." "Alright, hang on. I'm on my way to the store. Stay on the line until I get there." "Why? What's the big deal?" "Just stay on the line until I get there. Watch that guy and see what he does. If he doesn't leave within the next few minutes and I'm still not there, call the cops on the store phone." I waited by the front counter for my boss to arrive. He lived about 5 minutes down the road. While I was on the phone with him, I heard the fridge door slam shut, followed by a loud crash at the back of the store. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The next thing I knew, I heard the sound of someone running up toward where the counter was, but I couldn't see anyone. After a moment, the noise abruptly stopped. "Hey, you still there? What's going on?" My boss told me to call the cops. I quickly set my phone on the counter and started dialing 911. I heard another chuckle and looked up to see the hooded man standing in front of the counter. I jumped back and got ready to take a swing at him with the bat if I needed to. At that point, I finally saw the man's face. There was something very unnerving about his appearance. It wasn't just that he was creepy, but his appearance was somewhat unnatural looking. It almost looked like his face was somehow a botched job in Photoshop. Like his crooked smile didn't look real, looked unnatural. It reminded me of an old Grinch Christmas cartoon I used to watch as a kid. A few seconds later, I heard a car pull up outside the parking lot. I glanced over to see who it was. The second I took my eyes off the hooded man, he sprinted out of the store. A moment later, my boss came rushing in. He asked me if I was okay, and I said he'd just missed the guy. The cops arrived, and the security footage was reviewed. It showed somebody in a black hood running out of the store right before my boss came in. After everything was said and done, the cops told me they would keep an eye out for this guy. The camera didn't show his face, so they didn't get a good exact physical description of him. I tried to give all the details I could, but it wasn't much to go off of. Technically, the guy didn't commit any crimes either. My boss and I cleaned up the store and locked the place up. He then told me to go home and take a couple days off. That was the last time I ever worked the late shift by myself. As far as I know, the police never caught up with the hooded man. Personally, I feel like it was either someone with serious mental issues, in which case I hope he found help, or something else that I don't really know how to explain. Either way, I hope I never run into that guy again. I was around 19 or 20 when this occurred. I was living in a small apartment with my best friend Mason at the time. The front door was about 2 to 4 feet from his bedroom door, while mine was down the hallway toward the back of the apartment. One morning, at around 3 a.m. or so, I woke up suddenly to some heavy knocking on our front door. My dog instinctively reacted and began barking. At first, I just ignored it, assuming it must be an estranged family member of mine that I wanted nothing to do with. That's a long story for another time, though. I just knew I shouldn't open the door to anyone this late. As we were on the first floor of our apartment building, the knocking continued, though, so I grabbed a knife and crept over to the door. I looked out through the peephole to see a girl in her late teens on the other side. She was dressed up nicely, as if she had just been to a club or had gone bar hopping. We were about 5 miles from the University of Central Florida, so it wasn't uncommon for college kids to be out and about. With much trepidation, I opened the door just a bit. I asked the girl what she needed. She explained that she'd come here with a guy who started acting very strange and that she needed some help. I was about to ask if she wanted me to call the police, That was when we both heard a door open and slam on the level above us, followed by someone barreling down the staircase. We both looked at the stairs at the end of the hallway, listening to these booming footsteps descending. The girl began to clearly panic and pushed past me into my apartment. I quickly locked my door and ushered her into our living room. I was now flustered that I'd been thrusted into this situation against my will. I tried not to hold it against her, though. If the situation was reversed, I'd certainly want someone to help me out, too. I felt better after hitting my bong. Thankfully, the person didn't come to my door. The girl was visibly upset and asked me through tears if I would walk her back to her car. I said sure and that I would bring my dog Caddy along with me. He's a pit bull Rottweiler mix and would bite someone's ass cheek off if they tried anything. I leashed my dog and we walked together to the parking lot, which was not too far away from my building. I watched the girl climb into her car, and she thanked me profusely before closing the door and driving away. The next morning, I asked Mason if he'd heard all that commotion the night before. He didn't hear anything at all. He slept soundly through the night, and when I told him what happened, he didn't believe me at first. He even teased me by saying I was so full of shit that I'd probably dreamed up that scenario from all those bong hits. I started second-guessing the whole thing, but deep down I knew that it happened. I still have no idea what the guy on the second level looked like or what his intentions with that girl were, but it's pretty clear that whoever he was after her. I like to think that I at least helped that girl from being assaulted or worse that night. Who knows what would have happened if she'd been left outside? I used to be that guy that would do anything just for a quick buck. Well, actually, I still kind of am that guy. I'm also someone who's lucky enough to be able to fix just about anything. I'm what you might refer to as a handyman of some sort. So, anytime I could pick up some side work for cash, I was jumping right in. I'm not sure exactly how long ago this happened, but I was in my early 20s for sure. I'm 33 now for point of reference. At the time, I was struggling quite a bit to make ends meet. My girlfriend at the time told me about Craigslist and about how there was a real chance to make some money there. I'd heard about Craigslist before, but I never really gave it a shot. I didn't even know that there was work posted there. Once I started exploring Craigslist, I found a lot of job offers. People looking for painting, yard work, even plumbing. I was weighing my options and trying to find the best posting for me. I ended up answering this post from a guy named Steve. He was just really weird. Straight up, my first impression of this guy was not great at all. He was middle-aged, short, and very round. He had these huge eyes that bulged out of his head. He was rocking that sort of horseshoe haircut. You know the one. The hair on the sides, the weird hair on the top. Weird appearances aside, he said he was going to pay me some pretty good money to basically build him a little room in his basement. Specifically, he wanted to finish a small chunk and make a sort of man cave out of it. We set up times where I could go and work for several hours at a time, and he would pay me after each session. The house itself was quite weird. It was a big house in a nice neighborhood, but the inside of this home was gross and basically empty. It looked almost like a frat house, even though the guy was middle-aged. In the basement, Steve had already brought a ton of supplies, everything I'd need for the job and then some. He explained in detail exactly how he wanted everything. This guy even had intricate blueprints drawn up. I made sure that I constantly checked in with him before I completed any work, just because I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Other than being slightly strange, Steve wasn't really a bad guy. We talked about the project a bit and then he disappeared. I wouldn't see him again until I left. After the first session, I started bringing my brother with me from time to time. The job was more ambitious than I'd anticipated. Whenever my brother came with me, Steve would never come into the basement. I'd only see him when I was alone. For the next few weeks, we worked on this basement room whenever we could find the time. I thought it was weird that Steve only wanted to finish a small portion and not the whole room. He clearly had more than enough supplies to do it. It seemed weird to just want to renovate this small area. My brother and I would constantly talk about how he would ever turn this into a man cave. It was going to be such a small space. It was so small you would barely be able to fit a love seat in the room. Ultimately, the conversation always led to us not caring because we were getting paid for the job. One late afternoon while we were there, I was finishing putting up a door for this small room. I was proud of the little room I had built and that it was nearing the finishing touches. My brother was out in the truck grabbing some tools and having a cigarette. Steve must have thought I'd come alone that day, though, because he joined me in the basement, looking eager and excited. I was finishing putting up the door and made some comments about the room being ready, when all of a sudden Steve kicked me in the back of the knee and pushed me inside, slamming the door behind me. While I was getting up to my feet, I could hear him installing some type of lock on the door. I was more than confused by this point, trying to process what was even happening. I tried to open the door, but just as I expected, Steve had locked it. I remember he started yelling something. "You're mine now. You're staying here, and you're never leaving." He just kept repeating versions of that same sentence over and over. I tried to bang on the door, but it wasn't doing anything. I tried pleading with the guy, but he just kept screaming at me. After a few minutes of this nonsense, I heard a thud loud enough that I could feel the vibration through the door. In my confusion and panicked state, I had totally forgotten my brother was right outside. He started making his way downstairs. He witnessed everything that just happened, and he wasted no time. He smacked Steve in the back of the head with a wrench. That apparently was the loud thud I'd just heard. While Steve was conked out on the ground, my brother grabbed the key to the padlock from his pocket and also found 2 different knives on him. My brother got me out of that room, and we immediately called the police. While we were waiting, my brother pretty much stood over Steve and made sure he stayed in place. When the police finally showed up, Steve was arrested for attempting to keep me prisoner, or something like that. I'm thankful my brother was there to save me that day. I still get freaked out thinking about this Steve character and whatever intentions he had. If my brother wasn't there, who knows how long I would have been trapped inside. I'm not sure what happened to Steve after this ordeal. I tried to just move on and forget about it. This is the first time I'm even revisiting this memory since it happened. It was probably the stupidest thing that guy could have done, but also definitely the scariest. This happened to me several years ago while I was serving as a missionary. It's one of the scariest experiences of my life and has made me appreciate what we refer to as our gut feelings. For some context, I was in a rural county of northern Georgia. 5 of my friends and I received a call from our church to go to the house of a close friend and help them out with some yard work. Being young volunteer missionaries, we jumped at the opportunity. The location was so far off the reservation that it wasn't even considered to be a town. It was more of a single neighborhood with huge houses surrounded by forest. I'm pretty sure that to this day the place doesn't even come up on Google Maps when you search it. After an hour of driving, we arrived at the house. We were greeted by a woman who I'll call Linda. She told us to drive further up the hill, so we drove up the paved road that looked like an escape maze from a kid's menu. We arrived at the top of the hill and parked the car. The entire property was littered with heaps of trash and abandoned trailers. It looked like a tornado had just dropped by for a visit to do some exterior decorating. Imagine the TV show Hoarders, but rather than just one house, it was an entire acre of property. The woman's sister, Sherry, who had previously owned this property, was not there. It was just Linda and her husband, Brett. She told us that we were doing this without her sister's knowledge. Her sister was a hoarder, you see, and a serious drug addict. She told us to throw everything we saw into a giant metal trash container. We felt uneasy doing this without permission, but we didn't really have much say in it. I wish I had listened to my gut feeling. Linda told us to clear out everything we saw before her sister got there. Linda had bought the property back from her sister and was due to have a lease in a couple of weeks. Linda and her husband left, and we got started with our work. I won't go into the cleaning process, as there isn't really much to mention there. There were 3 abandoned trailers all within 50 feet of each other, so we were all within sight. I was the type to explore abandoned places when given the opportunity, so I decided to be adventurous and go to the back of the first trailer out of sight of my friends. I got back there and there was so much trash continuing to pile up towards the hill's incline, and the back door of the trailer was wide open. I started to walk towards it. As I approached, I noticed there was trash piled up to the ceiling, yet there was a walkway to get around inside. As I got about 5 feet away, though, I stopped. Something in my gut told me to get out of there immediately, so I did. When I returned, Sherry was now back on the property. I'd been gone for maybe 5 minutes or so I didn't hear her car pulling in. She literally came out of nowhere. Whatever mental image you may have about her is probably accurate. I mean, who chooses to live in a little dump in the middle of nowhere? I'll answer. That same kind of person who immediately goes inside the metal container we were putting things in and starts throwing things back out into the yard. She began screaming, "How dare you throw my things away? There's valuable treasure in here!" We all stood there slack-jawed. Linda soon pulled up as well and began arguing with her sister that this was her property now and that all this garbage had to go. "I told you I'd start looking through it when I had the chance." We both know that's not going to happen. We decided that it was in our best interest to just leave now. Now, you might be wondering why I'm even sharing this story. All that is a little bit of family drama. Well, I wish I could tell you that's where things ended. 3 days later, there was an older gentleman from our congregation who wanted to meet up with us for dinner. It was his way of saying thank you for helping him out on his own property. We met up with him and his brother, and he filled us in about what happened after we left that day. The 2 sisters had a serious falling out, and Linda ended up calling the cops. Apparently, she'd seen someone inside one of the trailers. After the police arrived, they found several squatters inside who'd been living there for weeks. They were definitely still there when we were all there. When he said that, my heart froze. I realized that when I had ventured off, none of my friends could see me, and I was mere feet away from discovering these multiple squatters. Since that time, I've become proficient in some martial arts. However, at that time, I barely started training. I wouldn't have stood a chance against one squatter, let alone multiple. They were likely watching us from the windows that day. I'm grateful I listened to my gut feeling when it mattered the most, and I recommend everyone listening to do the same. This is a true story that happened during an evening winter walk in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. This happened several years back when I was 13. This was a time when I was growing up in New York, but we actually had a summer home in Cape Cod and spent every other weekend there if we could. By the way, Cape Cod is a peninsula off the east coast of Massachusetts. It becomes very busy and crowded during the summertime, but during the winter season it's practically empty. The majority of the houses in that area are owned as summer homes, So during the winter, the houses are still there, but the people are not. In contrast to New York, there are only street lamps on the single main road in this town. The main road goes from the town center down to the beach. Aside from this road, though, all the others are completely dark and very black at night. Cape Cod extends out into the Atlantic from the mainland, forming a bay. At Cape Cod Bay, not only can one watch the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean, but can watch the sun set over Cape Cod Bay on any given clear day. Another effect of being surrounded by ocean is that there's very little man-made light at night, so the stars are so clear that the Milky Way is clearly visible, spanning across the sky. This story happened during the vacation period between Christmas and the New Year. The Christmas celebration was already finished. There was plenty of leftover turkey and pumpkin pie, and we got a bit of cabin fever with all the Christmas food and family. On one evening, my older sister, who's 7 years older than I am, 20 at the time, came up with the idea to take a walk down to the harbor, which was about a 20-minute walk away from our home. The harbor could be quite fun. You could walk on the docks and look at all the boats. While I was a bit creeped out to walk around a deserted beach town on a cold winter night, I also thought it would be fun to get out of the house, maybe even a little exciting as well. We headed out. Across the street from our classic Cape Cod cottage was a field with a forest at the other end. At nighttime, I would always have this little fear that there might be some psycho watching from the tall grass. I always imagined it as a man with an axe or something, but while I kept my nerves wary, I knew it was just my imagination. Still, whenever I saw the wind blowing that tall grass, it was a perfect setting for some horror movies. Add to that a moonless sky with a million sparkling stars in the Milky Way above, and the horror setting was at Stephen King levels. We walked out to the main road, went down the road a bit, and then turned to walk down a side street that led to the street that led to the harbor. This side street ran along the backside of a big hotel. It was well situated in town to be full of life during the summer, but on this December evening, the hotel was closed for the season, completely pitch black, several windows covered with plywood for protection. My sister mentioned that a hotel that spanned an entire block but was partially boarded up really reminded her of a horror movie, like one of those slasher films where the characters make all the wrong decisions and walk into the worst of dark places. At the end of the street with the hotel, we continued left, which was a long, dark road downhill through the woods to the harbor. This wasn't a pure forest, though, because there were some houses set back from the road with an occasional driveway. We couldn't see anything. It was pitch black in this wooded area, and the road seemed to stretch on into the darkness forever. We hadn't seen a single car or person or any sort of life since we'd left the home. My nerves were really on edge. I was only 13 at the time, and although my nerves were screaming, I tried to stay calm. I wanted to seem tough to my sister. The woods alongside the road were particularly nerve-wracking. The trees came right up to the asphalt on each side of the road, providing many opportunities to hide someone or something. The houses beyond the woods were pitch black as well, because the vacationers were all gone in the winter. I started to notice that my sister was also swiftly starting to lose her nerves. And that's when I felt this weird flush of energy move up the back of my neck, making it feel like my hairs were standing on end. It was that feeling you get when you feel like you're being watched. It's hard to describe, really. I still experience it today sometimes, when someone is looking at me from behind. You know, a sixth sense. We were now midway through the wooded area down the hill toward the harbor. I was just about to stop pretending not to be freaked out, until my sister said we should go back right now. She said it was late, and we didn't have to go all the way to the harbor. I replied immediately, Yeah, let's go. It's kinda creepy and dark down there. The back of my neck was now shivering. I felt goosebumps ringing out all over my body, and I began to shudder. My sister said that we'd go back right now and come back tomorrow. We turned around and she grabbed my hand. We started moving quickly. She was holding me so tight that it actually started to hurt. My sister never held my hand like that, and I can't think of a single other time she'd done this. This is where the story took a deep dive down the rabbit hole. As we got toward the end of the wooded area, my sister suddenly screamed out, "I've got a knife and I'm not afraid to use it!" She didn't lose any of the rhythm of her fast walking while saying this. We crossed a street now and headed onto the street at the back side of the hotel. My sister started moving even faster. I tried to look back, but she told me not to do so. I was really freaking out at this point. Aside from the eerie vibes of the dark and empty streets, my own inner panic was really setting in. I'd not actually seen anything out of the ordinary though, with the exception of my sister's completely insane behavior. That was when she told me that when she said run, we needed to run as hard as we could. We were almost on the main road, a block from our street, when she screamed to run. We booked it, and she let go of my hand. We broke into the fastest sprint we could manage. I could hear our footsteps banging on the asphalt, and I could also hear several other people's footsteps banging behind us just a short distance away. We cut around the grassy area to take a shortcut towards our street and ran through the front yards of our neighbor's house to make a beeline for the front door. We made it in, and we both locked the door, which was mostly glass. I was panicking, but I wasn't sure if there was anything going on or we were just being crazy. It was a strange transition from outside, which was terrifying, to the inside of a warm and lit house which felt safe. I was questioning what was even going on. I asked my sister what was going on. She said there was a man standing at the edge of one of the driveways. We had walked right by him, but as she looked back to consider walking back, she noticed him. She said that he'd followed us the entire way, and when we crossed the street from the hotel, he began chasing right after us. It didn't make sense that a man would be standing out there in that dark wooded area, with no light or anything on him. Honestly, I don't understand what really happened that night. I'm not sure of how much of what my sister said was true, or if she was just seeing things or not. One thing's for sure, though. I realized that I much prefer walking to that harbor during the daylight. This didn't happen to me, but to a friend, and it's up to you if you believe this or not. I'm not sure either. All I know is that this story really creeped me out. I could empathize with him really, because after what he said happened. I don't know what I would have done if I were in that situation. Anyway, it happened when my friend was walking home one night. He was just looking at the ground. He's always like that, really. I tell him often to sort his posture out, but he never really listens to me about it. He wasn't expecting to see many people out on the streets, if anyone at all. He worked the night shift, so that may be why he liked to walk like that. He said he stopped in his tracks, though, because he saw someone approaching out of the corner of his eye. There was a person walking right towards him. He took a glance over toward them and said that his first impression was, "Oh, the fair must be in town." It looked to him like the person was wearing some sort of mask. It was kind of slipped down a bit. It was pretty weird to see, but hey, they say the weirdos all come out at night, right? He stepped to the side to share the sidewalk with this figure. He kept his eye on him, though. He quit looking at the ground because this person was nearby. He said that as the person got closer, he realized that it was not a normal mask, not one made of plastic or something. He said it looked like a mask made of some sort of animal flesh. He said he was freaking out at that point. It was literally about 2 a.m., and here was someone who was seriously strange about to pass him by. He decided to try and not pass judgment on this person. Getting a closer look at this guy's face, he couldn't be sure if it was someone who was suffering some sort of affliction of the skin or something. With that in mind, he cursed himself a little and picked up the pace to make sure he would pass by quickly. He then heard the person speak out to him, "Good evening." He looked up to make eye contact, as to not appear rude. He was shocked by what he saw now that he was closer. Now that he was right up next to him, he was certain that it actually was a mask the man was wearing, made of some sort of strange material. It was elongated and stretched into this horrible contortion. He said it almost looked like the painting The Scream. Imagine that on a dark night, right next to you. My friend said that the guy was really freaking him out with the energy he was giving him. The man just stared at him and didn't say anything else. He began to panic. He turned around and ran. Didn't even make a sound, just turned and ran as fast as he could. His footfalls echoing through the empty streets weren't the only sounds that could be heard that night, though, for the man who just wished him good evening continued to chase after him. He could hear the man repeating the phrase over and over, "Good evening, good evening." He said it as though he was glitching out like a robot or something. My friend ran as fast as he could, trying to get away from this guy. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of a nearby convenience store. He was really shaken up about all this. He didn't tell me exactly how long he stayed in that store hiding out, but I bet it was for a long time. This made me remember an urban legend we have here in Japan. They say if ghosts call out to you, you should never respond to them. Sometimes I wonder if that's what might have happened that night. Whether it was a person with mental issues or it really was a spirit. Whoever it was seemed really desperate to communicate with my friend that night. In a decently sized city with a population of about 100,000, I play hockey and go to school. My family lives about 35 minutes south of there, on a farm. Every day I had to drive into the city for school and hockey practice. My team had an upcoming home game, so I was on my way into the city one day. There's roughly a 2-kilometer gravel road you have to go down before you get to the main highway that leads directly into the city. Before turning onto the highway, there was a ditch where a derelict tractor sat. It had been there for about a month or so. As I passed by the tractor on that day, I noticed something odd. There appeared to be someone underneath the tractor. Their head was hidden by the tractor wheel. It almost looked like they were trying to repair it, but they weren't moving at all. It was a bit odd, but I didn't want to be late for the game, so I just kept on driving. After the game, I met up with my mom before heading home. She liked to attend my games whenever she could. She got a call from my aunt and said, "You're not going to believe this, but there was a guy who had his head chopped off while he was repairing a tractor. They found him right by where you guys live." My heart dropped. I remember driving past that tractor nearly 5 hours prior. That man must have been laying there with no head at all. On my way back home, there was an ambulance, police cars, and men taking photographs. They hadn't removed the body yet. However, they had placed a blanket over it. I don't know if I should put it this way, but I think it's a good thing the big wheel blocked the view from the gravel road. It would have been quite mentally scarring for me to see the headless corpse of a man right there. My mom had my younger brother with her in the car. If he had seen something like that, it really would have messed him up for life. This experience happened in 2019. At the time, I was 22, attending a university in Utah. It was getting close to Thanksgiving break, and I was planning on traveling home to California. My parents live in the Bay Area, and it was about a 12-hour drive to get home. Leading up to that Saturday, I was constantly checking the weather, because the Sierra Nevadas near Tahoe can be very dangerous to drive through when it's snowing. In the years past, I could get through the Sierra Nevadas with relative ease, but of course that year the weather report stated a huge snowstorm would be coming throughout the day that I was supposed to be traveling. My sister, who would also be traveling home with me, decided to book a last-minute flight because she didn't want to risk driving through the snowstorm. Being confident in my own driving abilities, though, and not wanting to spend hundreds of bucks on a last-minute flight, I decided I would take my chances on the highway. I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to make the drive in my 2014 Ford Focus, though, which was only a front-wheel drive vehicle. I asked my sister if I could take her Jeep Wrangler instead. She agreed on the condition that I take her to the Salt Lake City airport. The night of her flight came, and I began my 12-hour drive home as well, going north on I-15 and eventually getting on I-80 west. Once I hit Salt Lake City driving on I-80, it became clear that the snowstorm was coming in from the west. I constantly looked to see if the weather was changing, but each time I checked the weather report, it remained unchanged. 7 to 8 hours into my drive, I saw one of those electric highway signs that stated that I-80 would be closing down due to severe weather conditions. I started to worry. It was about 5 p.m., and there was no way I was going to turn around and go back. I stocked my car once I hit Reno for some gas and to think things over. I had 2 reasonable options that I could take, either spend the night in Reno or find another way through the storm. Being that I didn't want to spend the extra money to find a hotel, I made the choice to find an alternate route. I looked at my GPS and discovered that there was another pass through the Sierra Nevadas if I went south through Carson City. By this time, the storm had started to pick up. I would have to drive cautiously. I was able to make it to the entrance of the Sierra Nevada Pass. There were a couple of road workers there stopping cars to make sure they either had chains or all-wheel drive. The Jeep was equipped with both. I had to drive slowly, between 10 to 20 miles per hour. The roads were completely covered with compacted snow, and the wind gusts were at over 30 miles per hour. I had defrost on at full blast, with the windshield wipers going maximum speed. After about an hour of going at this grueling pace, I became frustrated. I was making very little progress. I was in the middle of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, with forests on both sides of the road. The ground was completely blanketed by snow and ice. As the darkness crept in, I could barely see any other cars on the road. I had the Jeep in first gear, allowing me to engine brake, but I foolishly decided to increase my speed to 25 miles per hour to escape this blizzard faster. The Jeep slipped right off the road into a small ditch. Luckily, I wasn't hurt, because I hadn't been going that fast. However, the Jeep was now trapped in deep snow. When I pushed the gas pedal to try and get out, it wouldn't budge at all. After a few minutes of hopelessly trying to get out of the ditch, I realized I would have to get out of the car and see if I could find some way to get traction. The temperatures had reached freezing outside, but thankfully I had a winter coat I could put on. I walked around the Jeep to see the entire situation. My best course of action was to dig the snow out from around my tires. I couldn't put the chains on the Jeep now. I was stupid for not doing so earlier. I didn't have gloves or a shovel either, so I would have to dig with my bare hands. After a few minutes, my fingers were freezing. I got back inside the Jeep and tried to move it. It was only able to move slightly. I was still stuck. This is when panic began to set in. I hadn't seen another car in over 45 minutes now, and I had no cell service, which was no surprise being in the middle of a mountain range. I felt completely hopeless. I looked out my window and saw the maze of trees swaying in the blistering wind. I thought I could find some fallen branches or something to give my wheels traction. I didn't want to go too far, though, just in case another car would see me and stop to help or something. I walked about 50 yards into the woods. I only had my phone flashlight on me, which didn't provide much light at all. I searched for any type of loose wood. Most of the branches were higher than I could reach. Luckily, I found a few fallen ones that weren't as thick. I snapped them in half so I would have more pieces to stick under my wheels. That's when I heard what sounded like footsteps. I stopped and listened in. All I could hear was the sound of the howling wind now. I suddenly felt very uneasy. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I felt like someone was watching me now. I had no idea why somebody else would be out in the middle of a blizzard at this time. I then saw a low-hanging branch on a tree that was thin enough for me to break off. I did so, and as soon as I did, I heard footsteps again. There was no doubt in my mind that someone else was lurking nearby. I squinted my eyes, looking around in the dark and pointing my phone flashlight in every direction. To my horror, I noticed the outline of a dark hooded figure standing 25 yards away. I looked at this figure for several moments as they looked back at me. I was paralyzed by fear. My fight or flight kicked in though, and I turned around and started sprinting through the snow back to the car. I could hear footsteps trailing behind me. Whoever I'd seen was now chasing me. My mind felt like it was moving at 1,000,000 miles per second, and I knew what I had to do. When I reached the Jeep, I quickly shoved all the sticks behind both of the rear tires, knowing that I wouldn't have time to do the same to the front. Thankfully, the Jeep was still running. I dared not look behind me as I jumped inside and locked the door. As soon as I did, the figure caught up to me and began banging on the driver's side window. "Open the door now!" He looked like he was holding some kind of blade in his hand. I looked into his face as I put the Jeep into reverse. The man's eyes were the eyes of a psychopath. I pressed down on the gas as the man continued screaming at me to open the door. I can only thank God the Jeep was able to gain traction and back out of the ditch. The sticks must have given the wheels just enough traction to get me out and back onto the road. The man threw the knife directly at my head. If it wasn't for the windshield, it would have impacted me right there and then. I could hear the man's crazed wailing as I took off down the road. I had to be extremely careful not to accelerate too fast, as I didn't want to just end up stuck in another ditch again. I looked into the rearview mirror to see the man now standing in the road watching me drive away. I was on edge the rest of the way home. It took me 3 hours more than it usually would have, but eventually I did make it. It was after midnight, and I was exhausted from driving and having been chased by a homicidal maniac. Looking back, if I hadn't taken my sister's Jeep on that drive, I don't think I would have ever been seen again. Also, I didn't bother calling the police once I got service again. I didn't want to deal with filing a police report, and I didn't think they'd be able to find the man in the mountain pass anyway. I was tired and just wanted to get some rest. I sincerely hope that nobody else driving that night encountered that deranged man in the forest. I remember I slept over at my girlfriend's house, and while she was asleep, around 1 a.m. on a weekend, I watched some TV to help me get tired and get to sleep as well. While I was watching, I heard a female voice calling the name of my girlfriend. Not a harsh, strict call, more like a drawn-out one, over and over again, getting slightly louder each time. I woke her up and she almost shit the bed because she didn't recognize the voice at all. At this time, her parents and sister were at home, so we went downstairs to ask them if they'd heard something as well. They did not. Move forward to the next week, while I again slept at her place. Again, I started hearing this mysterious female voice calling out for my girlfriend. We thought it might just be the wind in the heating pipes, as they have a fireplace, or perhaps a prank from her parents. This kept going for about a month, and she was afraid to sleep because of that, as was I. I didn't believe in ghosty stuff or supernatural things happening, but this began to change my mind. A bit later, about 1.5 months after the initial happenings, we started to worry her parents and sister so much that they agreed to host a Ouija session to try and find out more, if it worked. At that session, we found out that this ghost girl calling for my girlfriend was named Anna, and apparently she had been killed by her mother in a small town in Spain when she was 8. She wanted to be friends with my girlfriend. Well, it turned out I had to dump my girlfriend about 2 months later because she was a completely psycho bitch, and this whole 8-year-old girl ghost haunting me thing was all part of a trick to try and scare me and get me to like her more somehow. Back in high school, I was on antidepressants. I was receiving help from my family doctor rather than a psychiatrist. There's generally a 1 to 2 week transition period where you have some undesirable side effects. Usually nothing too major though. I was at home alone taking a bath, trying to relax, when I distinctly remember hearing a dark, eerie, and ominous voice whisper to me, "Someone is here. Better check your closet." I tried to forget about it, but I was close to having an anxiety attack at that point. I got out, wrapped myself in a towel, and warily checked the linen closet right outside the bathroom. The voice came back and said, "Wrong closet." I went to check my bedroom closet, heart pounding and sweating at this point. After I opened it, I heard a creepy voice emitting this evil demonic laugh inside, and then a figure appearing and then fading off into the back of the closet. At that point, I decided to start seeing an actual psychiatrist, and they took me off that med real fucking quick, because apparently my side effect was having very vivid hallucinations. I remember I had a trucker call me over at work at a large warehouse one time. He was in a waiting area, and I figured he just wanted directions to the men's room or something. I walked over to him, when all of a sudden he jumped up and grabbed my wrist. He yanked me over to his face and whispered in my ear, "You came this far for free. What would you do for a quarter?" He was holding me so tight that it left deep bruises. It really scared the shit out of me. I told the foreman about this and hid close enough to hear him yelling at the trucker. I was the only woman on second shift, and all the guys were pretty protective of me, not that they'd ever needed to be before that night. Well, turns out 6 months later, we heard of a trucker being arrested for several murders. Came to find out that it was him. I was working as a waitress at a bar in the city, and this guy got overserved and was being pretty rowdy. He'd grabbed my arm and tried yanking me over to him, so we cut him off and sent him on his way. As I was locking up the patio, about an hour later, he suddenly wandered up to the edge from the parking lot, seemingly having sobered up quite a bit. I was smoking as I was working, and he called out and asked to bum a cigarette. I thought, what could the harm be, really? I walked over and went to hand him it, and then he jumped up on the edge of the porch and grabbed me. He pulled me right up to him and wrapped his hands around my neck and looked into my eyes with this wild, strange look. "I will fucking find you, and it will be soon." I flipped out and leveraged my foot against the railing to get out of his grip. I booked it inside. After I got off work, I sat at a nearby Waffle House until the morning, paranoid he was going to try and follow me home or something. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback for me as well, be sure to leave that in comments below the video. If you guys have a story you'd like to send in, or if you'd like to contact me for any reasons, there will be links to my social media in the description below the video, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description below the video. Please make sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with and try to use as much proper grammar as possible to make sure you have the highest chance of appearing in a future video. Overall, I think that's pretty much it for now, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.